Got a couple of questions to start off. First question is from Stephen. Define courage within the AFA and the importance for each member to instill this virtue within themselves. So, when asked to define something, it becomes very, almost immediately apparent to try to give examples of courage. That's not really a definition per se. Courage, certainly in an AFA context, is not so much an absence of fearing things, but it's not letting fear dictate your actions, or it's consciously overcoming fear to do right action. And that's part of the Odenshoff motto, to do right and fear no one. So doing right and fearing no one is the essence of what courage within the AFA means. And I think talking about the importance to instill that in our folk is going to come through the rest of the evening's discussions. Rob, how would you define courage, specifically in an Asatru sense?
Well, there's several different kinds of courage. And I was talking to my brother, who's a combat Marine, and I asked him, I said, were you scared? He said, of course I was scared. I'm not crazy, but I still did my job. And to me, that's courageous. Of course, you're going to be afraid. You're going to be worried. You're going to be scared, but doing it anyway, overcoming that fear and doing what's right. Absolutely. The courage isn't always the easy route. The praise comes afterwards if it comes, but in the moment, it's hard. It's hard to overcome fear. It's hard to overcome our own minds to do what's right, but courage is doing that.
Well, so to more answer the question as far as the importance of each member of the AFA instilling the virtue of courage, there's a reason that it's at the top of our list in the way we're ordering these virtues. Courage is a foundation that adds context and value to all of our other virtues. Courage, in a way, takes idea and puts it into action. It's very easy to have high-minded ideals about many things, but courage is putting that to the test when there's consequence. If there's no consequence, or if there's no risk, then standing behind something, it isn't, it may be good, but it isn't necessarily courageous. Courage comes when there is risk, when there is fear to overcome, yet you stand up to it and overcome it. And it's really the key to all of the values that we hold so very dear in Asatru. And it's something that, to be very honest, and we'll talk about it a little bit more this evening, but I've mentioned this a few times, and our founder, Steve McNallen, diagnosed our people as having a soul sickness. And I think that's very true. One of the biggest consequences of the sickness in our folks' soul is that so many of our folk, especially the younger generations of our folk, severely lack courage. And I don't say that to be disparaging. I say that so we know where we're at and we know how things that we can work on and things that we build, because I want all of us to help each other be strong and overcome. And courage is an area to where a lot of our folk are really suffering right now. It's something that I am proud of. I became the Alsheri Gothi of the Asatru Folk Assembly at a very interesting time in the AFA's history. And I suppose in the history of the Western world, just the way things have gone. There was a lot of fear around that time of being straightforward about our beliefs and about the ethnic nature of our faith, about our position on homosexuality and transgenderism and other mental illnesses, and really owning that and standing by it. And there's a big fear to say that out loud. There were winks and nods and hoping it'd be all right, but there was a very big reluctance and fear at the time of saying that up front and out loud. One of the most important things, because I advocated this position when I was the folk builder coordinator, as soon as I became the Alsheriagothi, one of the big things I wanted to do was the infamous white babies posts. And not having it in front of me, I think that it went something like, in the AFA, we're extremely proud of our feminine ladies, our masculine men, and our beautiful white babies. And that's the thing that started the whole Declaration 127, and it threw down the gauntlet to really polarize those of us who believe in Asatru the way that we do, and the other folks that have a progressive social agenda and claim to follow our gods. But it was scary because there's a reason people didn't want to do that before, is, that shook a lot of things up. And it did. We lost members over it. We had members for the wrong reason. And so it was good those people parted ways. But, at that time, one wrong move and there was a very real fear that everything had come crashing down. And it was meaningful to me. We lost some members, but we gained members 2-1 compared to the members that stepped away. And it's been kind of a defining moment in a lot of the progress that we've made. And that means a lot to me. And I'm very committed to doing the right thing as the Alsheriagothi and not just the easy thing. And that can be very difficult sometimes, but it's something that I very much meditate on and focus on because it's so very important to me. Absolutely. Don says, Tyr, the bravest fettering the chaos wolf, is one of my favorite stories about courage from the lore. What would be one of your favorite stories of courage from the lore? Rob, what's your favorite story of courage from the lore? You can't take the Tyr one.
Oh, because I already said it. Let's see. I've got one, but it's from a saga. Well, it's from the saga of Sigurd. And actually, my daughter, her middle name is named after this lady. Her name's Guthrun. And she was a loyal wife, a loyal mother, a loyal woman. And she got a raw deal because of some magical happenings and whatnot. And she walked into the ocean rather than be disloyal and stayed true. She stayed true to her heart. She survived it, but she did walk into the ocean rather than compromise her values. And that to me is a shining example of courage. And I'm paraphrasing because it's been a while since I've read it.
So my story is gonna also be not from high Edic lore. My favorite example of courage, and this is a different kind of courage in a way, is the example of King Radbod. And this meant a lot to me when he was one of the heroes that I first became aware of, and it meant a lot to me when I first started in Asatru. He was at a point intellectually to where he could accept that perhaps the Christian God was the only all-powerful God of the universe, and that must be the way things are. And he saw the power and the might of the missionaries and the Christian armies. And he was about ready to get baptized and go through that. And then he asked at the last minute, he said, but where are my ancestors? And he was told that his ancestors were burning in hell. And so if you can imagine for a moment, if your mindset is already to the point where you believe that that's real, that the Christian heaven exists and the Christian hell, as especially as presented in the medieval times, exists, to where it is an eternity of torture. When he heard that his ancestors, every last one of them, was burning in hell, he stepped out of the baptismal font and said, I'd rather burn in hell with my ancestors than be in heaven with a parcel of beggars. At that moment, when those consequences were very real to him, he chose hellfire over the easy path that took him away from his kin and away from his ancestors. And that's always meant so much to me and still does to this day. Can you talk about the difference between courageous femininity versus the pop shield maiden phenomenon? Tell us your thoughts, Rob.
Well, I mean, from a purely archaeological standpoint, the whole shield maiden thing isn't really supported. You know, but I mean, if you read some of the sagas, women were right there on the battlefield, encouraging the men. And in the saga, I think it was Saga of the Greenlanders, one woman, when the men were faltering, got in front of them and, spooked the natives away. There is courage in femininity. And honestly, these days, I think for women to be feminine is courageous in modern society. That alone is an act of courage, in my opinion, because all the popular culture is telling them to do otherwise.
It's courageous to be authentic, and something that I've seen in almost every incarnation of it. Whenever I have seen a woman that pretends to be a shield maiden or talks about how much of a Valkyrie and a shield maiden and whatever she wants to say that she is, I know to some of us at first it can become very off-putting, but on further examination and getting to know some of those ladies, it is and 100% of the time, this is what I've seen, it is a mask to hide inherent brokenness and inherent weakness. The women that I've known that have pretended so hard to be shield maidens are the weakest people. And I don't mean that insultingly. I mean that in a pitiful way. They're people that are very, very broken inside. And this is a persona they can take on to distract themselves from inadequacies that they feel. And I think that facing those things and overcoming inadequacies is much, much more courageous than pretending to be somebody that you aren't. Rob mentioned that being feminine in today's world is courageous because the people out there in society so often now want to completely twist and distort the image of our women to make them something they're not. It's as if the only way they can have value is by pretending to be men, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Our women that live femininity and embrace their femininity, embrace their roles as wives and as mothers and as grandmothers, those women are very courageous. The ability to tell truth to men, to encourage them to act right and to do the right things when maybe they would falter, is historically one of the best ways that women have exhibited courage, is by holding their men to account to make sure their men acted honorably and acted courageously rather than, shirking their responsibilities. Women encouraging that and instilling that in our young men, it means everything, and it's so very important. It will be a great day when our women stop with this shield maiden nonsense and can be truly proud of who they are and their inherent value. And I want to see them have that. And the more women in the AFA that I've watched develop that and hold their heads high as beautiful women, it's really special to see. And I look forward to seeing more of that. Steve asks, how do you want your members to move forward with courage and use this virtue to continue building and paving the way for the AFA? Rob, go ahead and go first on that one.
I think we touched on that earlier, is just live an authentic Asatru life. Live your truth and live it out in the open. Don't hide. Be proudly in pictures. Proudly use your name. Just live a real Asatru life, and that is how you be courageous. Is just be authentic. Easy.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. The courage that we're asking for isn't big, showy courage. It's that everyday courage of being proud of who you are, being proud of us, being proud of our gods, and being proud of the AFA. The more of our people that are good people with good families who do good things and are publicly AFA members, that builds our reputation amongst everyone. It makes it that much easier for our children and for our children's children to be proud AFA members. When folks hide, they look like they're doing something wrong because they're acting like they're doing something wrong. We're not. We're doing something right. And standing together, putting your face and your name out there and saying, hey, I'm a proud member of the AFA, that's what we want. That's what we need. And that's to a large extent why we've moved forward. The advances in the AFA have been, there's a lot of factors, and I would never discount how big of an impact our God's blessing us has been. Certainly that's the biggest factor. But on our end, having pictures of wonderful people doing wonderful things is what's bringing our folk home. They see that it's real and that it goes on in the real world with people who they can see look like great people that are smiling, that are happy, that are engaged in something spiritual. So living proud of who you are and your beliefs is what we want from our people. And it's not just what we want from our members, it's what we want for. We don't want you to have to always look over your shoulder wondering if somebody's going to discover your secret religion. No, we want you to be proud and to hold your head high and to feel confident with who you are and what you believe. And we're here for you, and we're here for each other. Agreed. Cliff says, so we're talking about courage. Can each of you share a moment in your life in which you wish you were more courageous or that you regret you were not courageous? Do you have any off the top of your head, Rob?
Yeah, and there's a few, and I guess one I'll speak about because it is something that haunts me to this day, and I've never really shared it with anyone. But when I was a teen, I was just 18, and my Opa that I've spoken about before, he was passing away, and I didn't handle that as well as I should. Instead of confronting, I said my goodbyes and whatnot, but I didn't stick around. I immediately joined the military and left. And I think I could have handled that a lot better. And I could have been more courageous about that. Instead of facing my feelings and being there, I left. And I regret that greatly. I wish I had the courage to have faced that better.
I appreciate you sharing that. It's going to sound silly, but I remember it because it stuck out to me so much. Because it happened when I was a kid. I can't remember how old I was, but I was at Camp Gorsuch, this Boy Scout camp in Alaska, and there was this repelling, um, I don't know, repelling thing we were all doing, and I mean, it was this, it was a really large rock thing. It wasn't like a cliff or something huge. It was like a really big rock. It was like, I don't know, 40-foot high or something. Nothing, shocking. But I was terrified and I couldn't do it. And a bunch of the other kids did it. And my dad was there. And I was so embarrassed that I was too scared to go down that. And it's silly because I know better, but I regret that and feel bad about that to this day. On a side note, but kind of partially, an interesting story that just came to mind was something that Rob said. When my grandfather passed, my uncle and I had a troubled relationship. He was a very severe alcoholic, and we just had a lot of things that we struggled with when I was in high school. But my grandfather, when he passed, my uncle would disparagingly say that I was cowardly, that I didn't go and look at his dead body after he'd passed. And that wasn't the case. That was never something that was offered to me. I didn't do that consciously, but what I did make sure to do is when my uncle passed, I made very sure that I went there and did a viewing of the body and stood with him and viewed as he went into the crematorium. So not that that's either here or there. It's just an interesting thing I thought of when something came up that I thought of on it, because it was, referred to, I guess, irreverently afterwards, but not intentionally so, as taking the dead body challenge, is, being willing to go be there when that was something like that was the first and only dead person that I've ever seen.